In this video, I'm about to show you 25 bottled water brands to stay away from, and why, as well as 10 you should actually be drinking, starting with number 25, Starkey Spring Water. When people shop at Whole Foods, they expect premium quality, not hidden health risks. But Starkey Spring Water, the store's in-house bottled water, has a long history of trouble. Independent tests, including those highlighted by Consumer Reports, found arsenic levels in Starkey that pushed close to, and in some cases above, the federal limit of 10 parts per billion. To put that in perspective, 10 parts per billion means just 10 drops of arsenic in an entire Olympic-sized swimming pool. Even at such trace levels, scientists warn that consistent exposure over years can increase the risk of cancer, skin lesions, and circulatory problems. Whole Foods has had to recall Starkey multiple times, pulling bottles off shelves after regulators flagged the high arsenic content. The most recent recalls were in 2019, proving this isn't an outdated concern. What makes it worse is the way the product was positioned: spring water, naturally sourced while carrying one of the most infamous toxic elements on Earth. And this wasn't bargain water. Starkey is sold in glass bottles at a higher price, pitched as a cleaner, more sophisticated choice. Imagine paying extra for what you think is the purest bottled water, only to find out you're slowly ingesting a poison historically known for tainting wells and causing chronic illness. That betrayal makes Starkey a brand we consider a clear stay away. Number 24, Peafiel. Peafiel might not be a household name like Dasani or Aquafina, but you've probably seen it on the shelves at big box stores like Walmart or Kroger, usually sitting right next to other sparkling and mineral waters. It's owned by Keurig Dr. Pepper, the same company behind Canada Dry and 7UP. In 2019, this brand was suddenly pulled from shelves after Consumer Reports and the FDA flagged it for arsenic levels above the U.S. safety standard. That is not a small slip-up. Arsenic is one of the most toxic elements you can consume, even at low doses. Studies link chronic arsenic exposure to higher risks of cancer, heart disease, and developmental problems. The fact that a mainstream company allowed a brand under their umbrella to reach consumers with levels this high is alarming. What makes it sting even more is how Peafiel was marketed: a crisp, refreshing mineral water, sold as a better choice than soda. But behind that image was a contaminant most of us associate with poisoned wells and unsafe tap water. The company did remove the affected bottles, but the trust is gone. Once a bottled water has been caught with unsafe arsenic levels, it's hard to believe it won't happen again. For that reason, Peafiel belongs firmly on the list of bottled waters to avoid. Number 23, Crystal Geyser Alpine. Crystal Geyser Alpine Spring looks like the classic American bottled water. The red and blue mountain logo, the words Alpine Spring across the label, and the promise of pure spring water straight from the source. But behind that clean image is a history that should make you think twice. In 2020, the company behind Crystal Geyser admitted in federal court that it had illegally stored and transported wastewater tainted with arsenic. This wasn't a small slip. They had to pay fines after prosecutors found they mishandled millions of gallons of contaminated water left over from their bottling operations in California. Now, that doesn't mean every bottle on the shelf was filled with arsenic. But what it does show is a troubling lack of care in how Crystal Geyser managed its production. If a company is willing to cut corners on waste disposal with something as dangerous as arsenic, how much can you really trust them when it comes to what ends up in your bottle? The brand still sells nationwide at places like Walmart, Target, and grocery stores, often positioned as a cheaper alternative to Poland Spring or Deer Park. But a bargain doesn't mean much if the company behind it has already been caught mishandling toxins. For that reason, Crystal Geyser Alpine Spring earns a place on the list of bottled waters to avoid. Number 22, Kroger Purified Drinking Water. Kroger is one of the biggest grocery chains in America, and just like Walmart, they slap their name on everything, including bottled water. Kroger Purified Drinking Water sounds safe enough, right? The word purified makes you picture clean filters and a crystal clear mountain stream. But let's be real, this is usually just tap water in a bottle, run through some basic treatment and sold back to you by the case. Independent testing from watchdog groups like the Environmental Working Group has shown that Kroger's water isn't as pure as the label makes it sound. Reports found traces of disinfection byproducts and chemical residues, things you don't want in something you're supposed to drink every day. It's not arsenic level scary, but it proves the point. Cheap doesn't equal safe. And here's the kicker. You're often paying more per gallon for Kroger's bottled water than you would for the same water coming straight out of your kitchen sink. That's the business model. Dress up ordinary tap water as a convenient product and hope people don't ask questions. So if you're thinking Kroger's bargain water is a smart buy, think again. For a chain this massive, you'd expect higher standards. Instead, what you get is a corner-cutting product with nothing special inside, except maybe chemicals you didn't bargain for. For us, it's an easy pass. Number 21, great value. Walmart's great value line is all about one thing, being cheap, and their bottled water is no different. You've probably seen those big cases stacked sky high in the middle of the aisle, sold at a price that feels almost too good to be true. But here's the catch, it is. Independent tests, including those covered by the Environmental Working Group and watchdog outlets, have found microplastics and even traces of PFAS chemicals in bottles sold under the Great Value name. These are the same forever chemicals scientists say stick in your body for years, linked to everything from hormone disruption to cancer. And let's not forget the microplastics problem. A Columbia University study in 2024 revealed that bottled water can contain hundreds of thousands of microscopic plastic particles per liter, and cheaper brands packaged in thin plastic bottles are often the worst offenders. That means with every sip, you're drinking more than just water, you're swallowing bits of plastic your body can't break down. People buy Walmart water because it's affordable, not because they think it's the cleanest. But when you're dealing with something you drink every single day, cheap shouldn't come before safe. The truth is, Great Value bottled water lives up to its name only in price, not in quality. For us, it's one of the easiest waters to leave sitting on the shelf. Number 20, real water. If there's one bottled water story that shows just how dangerous slick marketing can be, it's real water. This wasn't just another alkaline water on the shelf promising better hydration or balance. Real water ended up linked to a real outbreak of non-viral hepatitis, a serious liver condition that sent multiple people to the hospital, including children. The FDA and CDC investigated, and the evidence was clear. People drinking real water were getting sick, badly sick. By 2021, the FDA had to step in, issuing public warnings and forcing the company to pull its products nationwide. Eventually, real water shut down completely under a federal consent decree, and lawsuits from victims piled up. In one Nevada case, a jury awarded over $200 million in damages to families who were affected. Think about that. This wasn't a minor labeling issue or a trace chemical detection. This was bottled water that actually poisoned people in the United States in modern times. What makes it worse is how the company sold the product. Real water pushed itself as a healthy alkaline lifestyle brand, even suggesting it could detox the body. Instead, it destroyed people's health. No matter where you stand on alkaline water trends, this case proves one thing. Flashy health claims mean nothing if the brand can't even guarantee basic safety. Real water deserves its spot at the very top of any bottled water list to avoid. Number 19, Waiakea Hawaiian Volcanic Water. At first glance, Waiakea Hawaiian Volcanic Water looks like a luxury product. The sleek blue bottles, the Hawaiian imagery, the promise of naturally filtered volcanic water, it's marketed as the premium choice for people who want the purest water on Earth. But behind that polished branding, Waiakea has faced some serious issues. In 2023, and again in 2024, the company had to recall batches of its bottled water after consumers reported floating particles inside the bottles. The FDA followed up with a warning letter citing concerns about how the plant was operating and whether their safety protocols were strong enough. That's a major red flag. Bottled water should be crystal clear, not filled with bits of unknown debris. Waiakea positions itself as eco-friendly and healthy, but what's really eco-friendly about producing bottled water that can't pass basic quality checks? And what's healthy about drinking from a bottle where you can literally see contamination with your own eyes? Customers paying extra for Waiakea thought they were buying into purity and prestige, but what they actually got was product inconsistency and recalls. When it comes to something you put into your body every single day, image isn't enough. Waiakea's failures show that even premium labels can cut corners, and that a fancy bottle doesn't guarantee what's inside is safe. For that makes it a brand to avoid. Number 18, Topo Chico. Topo Chico has a cult following. The glass bottles, the old school label, the sharp carbonation, people swear it's the best sparkling water out there. But behind the hype, the numbers tell a different story. In Consumer Reports 2020 testing, Topo Chico ranked at the very top for PFAS contamination, those forever chemicals that don't leave your body once they're in. That's not something I want to sip every day, no matter how trendy the brand looks on a bar counter. And the problems didn't stop there. In 2025, Topo Chico was recalled at Costco after bottles tested positive for bacterial contamination linked to Pseudomonas, a germ that can cause infections in people with weakened immune systems. Think about that, a brand with millions of loyal fans selling water that might carry bacteria inside the bottle. The company behind Topo Chico is Coca-Cola, one of the biggest beverage giants in the world. With all their resources, you'd think they'd have tighter controls. Instead, this so-called premium sparkling water has been caught not once, but twice in serious safety concerns within just a few years. A fancy glass bottle doesn't make up for toxic chemicals and recalls. When I see Topo Chico on the shelf, I don't see a hip mineral water. I see forever chemicals and headlines about contamination. That's why I leave it right where it sits. Number 17. Kroger Carbonated Water. Kroger isn't just the country's biggest grocery chain. They also flood the shelves with private label products meant to undercut national brands. One of those is Kroger's carbonated water, the seltzer cans and bottles that sit right next to LaCroix, Bubbly, and Polar. It looks harmless enough, fizzy water with a splash of flavor, no calories, no sugar. But Consumer Reports testing told a different story. Kroger's carbonated water was flagged for PFAS contamination, those forever chemicals that build up in the body and have been linked to cancer, thyroid disease, and immune issues. What makes PFAS so tricky is that you'll never notice them. You don't taste them, you don't smell them, and you don't see them floating around. You pop open a can, hear that crisp fizz, and think you're making a healthy choice. But sip by sip, you're ingesting chemicals that scientists say can stay in your system for decades. For me, that completely undermines the whole point of sparkling water. The reason people grab seltzer instead of soda is because they think it's the cleaner, healthier option. Yet here's Kroger, cutting corners and selling a product that may be cheap but carries risks you'll never see on the label. When it comes to carbonated water, I'd rather spend a little more on something I can actually trust than gamble with Kroger's bargain cans. Number 16. Niagara Bottling. Most people don't realize it, but when you grab a cheap case of water at the grocery store, there's a good chance it was bottled by a company called Niagara Bottling. They're one of the biggest private label suppliers in the United States. That means their plants fill bottles for dozens of store brands: 7-Eleven, Wegmans, ShopRite, Acme, you name it. The label changes, but behind the scenes, it's the same water. Back in 2015, Niagara had to recall large amounts of product after one of their Pennsylvania spring sources tested positive for E. coli. The company claimed no contaminated bottles made it to shelves, but regulators weren't willing to take the chance. For me, that's the problem. If your entire business is selling basic bottled water, you can't afford slip-ups that even hint at contamination. Consumers expect the cheapest water in the aisle to at least be safe. Niagara also doesn't bottle fancy mineral water or luxury brands. It's all about volume, pumping out millions of units for retailers who want their own label on the case. That's where I get skeptical. When the business model is about speed and scale instead of transparency, quality often takes a back seat. After an E. coli scare and knowing just how many labels roll out of the same factories, Niagara is a name I'd rather leave behind. Number 15. Deer Park. Deer Park is one of those bottled waters you see everywhere. Gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines. It's owned by Blue Triton Brands, the same people who used to run Nestle Waters in the US, and it's been around for more than a century. With all that history, you'd think it would be one of the safest picks. But when Consumer Reports tested bottled waters in 2020, Deer Park came back with detectable levels of PFAS, the forever chemicals that don't leave your body once they're in. Now, the company will tell you those levels were within legal limits. But here's the catch. The EPA has since moved to tighten the standard down to just a few parts per trillion because even tiny amounts are linked to health problems. We are talking about cancer risks, thyroid disruption, and immune system damage, all from chemicals you can't see or taste. That's what makes this so dangerous. When you twist off the cap of a Deer Park bottle, it tastes clean and crisp. But behind that is lab data showing chemicals that your body stores for decades. To me, that's not worth the risk. I don't care how long the brand has been around or how familiar it feels on the shelf. If a trusted name like Deer Park can't guarantee chemical-free water, I'd rather choose something else. Number 14. Tourmaline Spring. Tourmaline Spring is a brand that loves to market itself as sacred living water. It's bottled in Maine, sold in glass, and pitched as one of the purest, most untouched waters on Earth. At first glance, it looks like the kind of premium product you'd expect to be safer than the rest. But in 2020, when Consumer Reports tested bottled waters, Tourmaline Spring showed detectable levels of PFAS, those so-called forever chemicals that don't break down in your body or the environment. The company defended itself by pointing out that it was still under the voluntary limits set by the International Bottled Water Association. But here's where I draw the line. The EPA has since said there's essentially no safe level for certain PFAS, and health experts argue that any detection is a red flag. If I'm paying premium prices for glass-bottled spring water, I shouldn't be getting even a trace of toxic chemicals that can stay in my blood for decades. What frustrates me most is the marketing spin. Words like sacred and pristine make you think you're buying something untouched by modern problems. In reality, the tests prove otherwise. Tourmaline Spring might look pure on the outside, but purity should be backed by science, not slogans. Once I saw the data, it lost all credibility for me. Number 13. Ice Mountain. If you live in the Midwest, you know Ice Mountain. It's the bottled water with the blue label, marketed as 100% natural spring water from the Great Lakes region. For decades, it's been the default pick in offices, schools, and gas stations, from Michigan to Indiana. The branding sells you on purity, crisp Midwestern springs, untouched by the problems you'd expect in city tap water, but testing has shown that Ice Mountain isn't nearly as clean as the label suggests. When Consumer Reports ran lab tests in 2020, Ice Mountain turned up with detectable PFAS chemicals. They weren't sky-high numbers, but that misses the point. These compounds don't break down in the body, and health officials now say the safest level is essentially zero. For a brand built entirely on the idea of local trust, that's a serious strike. There's also the ongoing controversy around Ice Mountain's pumping practices in Michigan. Locals have fought against the company for years, arguing that they're draining aquifers for profit while leaving communities to deal with shortages and contamination. Pair that with chemical detections, and the brand that claims to bottle Midwest freshness starts looking more like a marketing strategy than a guarantee of safety. I used to think of Ice Mountain as the safe, everyday choice. But once I learned about both the lawsuits and the chemical data, it became a brand I won't touch. Number 12. Arrowhead. Arrowhead has been sold for decades as the ultimate mountain spring water. The label shows snowy peaks, the name ties directly to the San Bernardino Mountains in California, and the whole brand identity is built around purity. But if you follow the news, you know the real story isn't so picturesque. For years, Arrowhead's parent company has been accused of draining California's scarce water supply. During some of the worst droughts on record, trucks were still hauling millions of gallons out of the San Bernardino National Forest to bottle under the Arrowhead name. Regulators even ordered them to stop pumping, arguing their permit had expired decades earlier. So while Californians were told to cut back on showers and lawns, Arrowhead was still cashing in on local water. And then there's what's actually in the bottle. In 2020, Consumer Reports testing found detectable PFAS chemicals in Arrowhead. Even if those levels were technically under current guidelines, experts now agree there's really no safe amount. It's a double blow. Not only is the company draining public resources, the product itself isn't as pure as the label makes you believe. When I see Arrowhead on the shelf, I don't think of fresh mountain springs. I think of lawsuits, dried up streams, and chemicals slipping past the marketing. That's not something I want to drink. Number 11. Nestle Pure Life. Nestle Pure Life was designed to look like the safest water you could buy. The name alone sounds reassuring. Pure and life. For years, it dominated shelves at Walmart and Sam's Club, sold in giant cases that parents picked up without hesitation. It was pitched as the everyday water you could trust for your kids' lunches, road trips, and family gatherings. But beneath that safe-sounding label, the reality doesn't measure up. In Consumer Reports 2020 testing, Nestle Pure Life turned up with detectable PFAS chemicals. These are the forever chemicals scientists now say build up in the body and don't go away. Even though the company stressed the levels were within guidelines, the new science shows that the only truly safe level is zero. That's not what parents thought they were paying for when they bought cases of pure water. And here's another twist: Pure Life isn't even spring water. It's usually just municipal tap water that's been filtered and bottled. So you're not getting some pristine mountain source. You're buying treated city water dressed up with a comforting label. Add in the chemical detections, and suddenly it looks less like Pure Life and more like a marketing trick. To me, this is one of the clearest examples of why you can't trust the name on the bottle. When something sold as the safe family option shows contamination, that's the last brand I'd want in my fridge. Number 10. Perrier. For decades, Perrier has been the face of fancy bottled water. The green glass, the French name, the bubbles, it's marketed as a lifestyle, not just hydration. People order it in restaurants to feel classy, and it costs several times more than a basic seltzer. But paying more doesn't always mean you're getting something safer. Perrier has been in hot water before. In 1990, the brand had to recall 160 million bottles worldwide after tests found benzene, yes, the same chemical used in gasoline, inside its products. That should have been enough to put the company on high alert forever. Yet 30 years later, testing by Consumer Reports found PFAS chemicals in Perrier sparkling water. Not at levels that broke the law, but enough to raise eyebrows when the EPA now says the safest level for some PFAS is basically zero. What makes this worse is the illusion. People buy Perrier thinking they're stepping up to a healthier premium option, when in reality the track record shows repeated chemical concerns. At the end of the day, water is supposed to be simple, safe, and clean. If a brand charging luxury prices can't even guarantee that, then the bottle is nothing more than a status symbol with bubbles. Number 9. LaCroix. LaCroix was the drink that went from zero to everywhere almost overnight. Those pastel-colored cans were in every office, fridge, and backyard cooler, marketed as the fun, healthier alternative to soda. For a while, people were treating LaCroix like it was liquid gold, calorie-free, sugar-free, 100% natural. But hype doesn't make something safe. In 2018, LaCroix was dragged into court when a lawsuit accused it of containing synthetic ingredients while advertising itself as natural. The company denied it, and the case fizzled out, but the headlines were enough to plant doubt. Add to that independent lab tests, including Consumer Reports in 2020, that found PFAS chemicals in LaCroix. These are the so-called forever chemicals scientists say can linger in your body for years, not what people thought they were getting when they ditched soda for something clean. To me, the problem with LaCroix isn't just the lab results. It's the image it sold versus the reality behind the can. People jumped on board because it felt fresh, trendy, and guilt-free. Now the shine is worn off, and what's left is a brand with more questions than answers. If a company builds its empire on trust, even small cracks can shatter the whole thing. Number 8. Canada Dry Sparkling Seltzer. Most people know Canada Dry for ginger ale. It's the brand you grab when you're sick, when you're on a plane, or when you want something that feels a little gentler than soda. That reputation for comfort and trust carried over when the company started pushing flavored seltzers. After all, if they can make ginger ale taste clean and crisp, why wouldn't their sparkling water be the same? That's exactly how they've been able to slide into the market against LaCroix, Bubbly, and Polar. But in 2020, Consumer Reports testing revealed that Canada Dry's sparkling waters weren't so clean after all. They contained detectable PFAS chemicals. For me, that completely undercuts the image of safety the brand has leaned on for more than a century. If I'm reaching for seltzer as the better-for-you option, I don't want the same forever chemicals that regulators are scrambling to limit showing up in my glass. What makes this worse is how subtle it is. PFAS don't change the flavor, don't cloud the water, don't give you a warning sign. You sip it thinking you're doing the right thing, when in reality you're swallowing something that scientists say can build up in your body for decades. When a brand with this much history can't deliver the basics, water without chemicals, the trust is gone. Number 7. Poland Spring. Poland Spring has been a household name in the Northeast for over 150 years. The company loves to brag about its main heritage with ads that paint a picture of untouched forests and natural springs. For many families, grabbing a bottle of Poland Spring feels like the safe, all-American choice. But when you strip away the marketing, the story looks very different. Poland Spring has already faced lawsuits claiming some of its spring water wasn't truly from springs at all, but from ordinary groundwater. That alone was enough to crack the brand's image of purity. Then, in 2020, Consumer Reports testing added another blow when its sparkling water showed detectable PFAS chemicals. For a brand that has built an empire on words like natural and pure, that's a tough pill to swallow. The thing that gets me is how much trust people put into Poland Spring. Generations have grown up with it, and the name feels almost patriotic. Yet, the lawsuits and lab results suggest that heritage branding doesn't guarantee safety. A label can celebrate Maine's woods all day long, but what matters is what's inside the bottle. And when that bottle carries forever chemicals and legal disputes over its source, it's no longer the safe bet it pretends to be. Number 6. Bubbly. Bubbly came onto the scene fast. Backed by PepsiCo, it exploded onto shelves with colorful cans, playful fonts, and commercials that made it look like the fun, guilt-free way to drink bubbles. The whole brand is built around personality. Cans greet you with "Hey You" on the tabs, the ads are full of jokes, and the vibe screams lighthearted and healthy. But behind the bright colors and clever marketing, Bubbly has its own set of problems. In 2020, Consumer Reports testing found PFAS chemicals in Bubbly. That discovery cuts right through the brand's playful image. These are the same forever chemicals linked to long-term health risks, and no amount of cheery branding can hide that. What makes it more frustrating is that Bubbly is often marketed directly at health-conscious consumers who gave up soda and wanted a cleaner alternative. Instead, they're paying for the same bubbles with added baggage. And it's not just what's inside, it's what's missing. Bubbly doesn't list minerals, electrolytes, or anything beneficial. Strip away the flashy can, and you're left with carbonated water that's not only empty, but tainted with chemicals you never asked for. It proves that sometimes the loudest, trendiest brand on the shelf is the one you should question the most. Number 5. Polar Spring. Polar is the kind of brand that feels like it's been around forever. If you grew up in New England, chances are you've had a can of Polar seltzer sitting on the counter at a cookout or stuffed in the fridge door. They've been around since the late 1800s, built their whole identity on tradition, and people trust them because it's what we've always had. That's the kind of loyalty most brands dream about. But here's the problem. Being old doesn't mean being clean. In 2020, Consumer Reports testing found PFAS chemicals in Polar's sparkling waters. Yeah, the same forever chemicals that scientists say stick in your body for decades and have been tied to everything from thyroid problems to cancer. That's not what you want to hear about a brand that families have passed down like a tradition. What bothers me is the contradiction. Polar positions itself as the healthier swap for soda, no sugar, no calories, just bubbles and flavor. Yet, when I hear that it carries the same chemicals regulators are scrambling to crack down on, that clean image disappears. I look at Polar now and don't see heritage or family tradition. I see a reminder that even the oldest, most trusted names can let you down when it comes to something as basic as safe drinking water. Number 4. Aquafina. Aquafina is everywhere. Gas stations, airports, grocery stores. If Pepsi sells drinks there, you'll see that blue label stacked high. For years, it's been pitched as the pure water option. Cleaner than tap, something you can trust on the go. But the truth about Aquafina isn't nearly as refreshing as the ads make it out to be. Back in 2007, Pepsi actually had to admit that Aquafina isn't spring water at all. It's just filtered municipal tap water. That's right, the same city water you already pay for at home, bottled up and resold at a markup. People shrugged it off, because at least it was filtered. But newer research makes the story worse. In 2018, Orb Media tested bottled waters from around the world, and Aquafina showed one of the highest counts of microplastic particles per liter. Then, in 2024, scientists at Columbia and Rutgers confirmed it. Bottled water, especially the mass-produced brands, can carry hundreds of thousands of microscopic plastic fragments in every single liter. You can't see them, you can't taste them, but you're drinking plastic. And Pepsi knows it, yet they keep marketing Aquafina as if it's some elevated form of hydration. For me, that's the deal breaker. Why pay extra for tap water wrapped in a plastic problem? Aquafina isn't purity, it's convenience in a bottle, and convenience comes with a cost. Number 3. Dasani. If Aquafina is Pepsi's water, then Dasani is Coke's answer. You'll see it at every movie theater, every vending machine, every fast food counter. It's basically impossible to escape. And just like Aquafina, Coke wants you to believe Dasani is a step above ordinary water, crisp, refreshing, pure. But the story behind it tells a different tale. First off, Dasani is not spring water. It's just treated municipal water, city tap dressed up in a fancy label. Coke even had to admit this years ago after critics started calling them out. That alone makes me wonder why anyone should pay more for it when the same stuff flows out of the sink at home. Then there's the bigger issue. The plastics. Studies like the one from Orb Media in 2018, and more recently, Columbia University in 2024, found that bottled water brands, including Dasani, contain massive amounts of microplastics and nanoplastics. We're not talking a few stray particles, we're talking hundreds of thousands in a single liter. You can't see them, You can't taste them, but they're in there. And once those particles are in your body, they don't just vanish. Dasani is everywhere because Coke has the distribution power to put it in front of you at every turn. But availability doesn't equal quality. At the end of the day, you're paying top dollar for filtered tap water in a plastic bottle that adds more plastic to your system. Number 2. Essentia Alkaline Water. Essentia is one of those brands that blew up because of marketing. The sleek black and white label, the bold ionized alkaline water claim, it's been positioned as the high-performance choice, the kind of water athletes and influencers are seen holding on Instagram. The message is simple. This isn't just water, it's supposed to be better water. But once you strip away the hype, there isn't much to be impressed by. Independent labs have shown that Essentia isn't special at all. It's just filtered tap water that's been run through an ionization process to raise the pH. That means the fancy alkaline label is more of a buzzword than a benefit. Your body regulates its own pH just fine, so paying extra for something labeled as superior hydration doesn't really make sense. What frustrates me is the illusion. People shell out nearly double the price of regular bottled water because Essentia sells itself as a health upgrade. Yet studies and reviews consistently show it doesn't offer anything beyond what you'd get from a decent filter at home. And, like other bottled waters, tests have even found microplastics, so the pure performance water isn't so pure after all. When I look at Essentia, I don't see innovation. I see a clever marketing trick that turned plain tap water into a premium product. To me, that makes it one of the easiest bottles to leave behind. Number 1. Core Hydration. Core Hydration is one of those bottles that looks more like a fashion accessory than a drink. The tall, curvy design, the big, perfect pH 7.4 stamped across the label, it screams that you're buying something high-tech and superior. I've seen people grab it, thinking they're treating themselves to some next-level hydration. But when you look closer, it's not nearly as impressive as the marketing makes it sound. First off, perfect pH is a gimmick. Your body regulates its own pH constantly, and no bottled water is going to change that. Core sells the idea that hitting 7.4 makes it healthier or more balanced, but that number doesn't mean anything in practical terms. It's just filtered tap water with some added minerals for taste, wrapped up in branding that makes it look like science. Then there's the packaging. That sleek bottle might look premium, but watchdog groups and independent tests have pointed out the same issues you see in other plastic-heavy brands, microplastics showing up in the water itself. So even if you think you're buying some cleaner, smarter option, you're still swallowing plastic fragments you never asked for. To me, Core is the perfect example of why you can't judge bottled water by the design of the bottle. Underneath all the marketing, it's just another overpriced, overhyped product that doesn't deliver on the promise of being perfect. But if you thought all was doomed, since now even something as basic as water has become monopolized and therefore unsafe, think again. Because here are 10 brands actually doing it right, starting off with number 10, Spindrift. Spindrift isn't just another seltzer on the shelf, it's one of the few sparkling waters that actually backs up its clean image with solid data. Unlike most flavored seltzers that rely on natural flavors, a catch-all term that can mean anything from lab extracts to chemical blends, Spindrift uses real fruit juice for flavoring. That means when you drink a Spindrift, you're actually tasting a splash of lemon, raspberry, or orange, not a mystery formula. Even more important is what's not inside. When Consumer Reports and other independent testers looked at sparkling waters for PFAS contamination back in 2020, Spindrift landed at the very bottom of the list, with levels barely detectable compared to most competitors. In fact, some varieties showed results close to non-detectable, putting it ahead of big names like LaCroix, Canada Dry, and Topo Chico, which all had much higher levels. For me, that makes Spindrift stand out. It doesn't just sell an image, it delivers on it. Clean ingredients, fewer chemicals, real fruit instead of vague flavorings, and consistently lower contaminant scores in testing. Yes, it costs a little more than the bargain seltzers, but when the choice is between paying a bit extra or swallowing forever chemicals, I know where I'd put my money. If there's one sparkling water I'd actually feel good about drinking regularly, it's Spindrift. Number 9, San Pellegrino. San Pellegrino has been around for over a century, and it's one of the most recognizable sparkling mineral waters in the world. The green glass bottle, the red star, and the Italian heritage give it that old-world prestige you don't see with newer brands. It's not just water with bubbles, it's naturally carbonated mineral water from the foothills of the Italian Alps. And when you actually look at the data, it earns its reputation. In Consumer Reports 2020 testing of bottled waters, San Pellegrino showed relatively low PFAS levels compared to many other sparkling brands, while trendy names like LaCroix and Topo Chico came back with some of the highest detections. San Pellegrino's numbers were near the bottom of the chart. For something bottled and shipped internationally, that's impressive. Another plus is its mineral profile. San Pellegrino contains naturally occurring calcium, magnesium, and bicarbonate, which not only give it a crisp taste, but also contribute to hydration. You're not just drinking plain carbonated water, you're getting trace minerals that tap water and generic seltzers simply don't offer. To me, that's what sets San Pellegrino apart. It has the long history, the distinctive taste, and the test results to prove it isn't loaded with chemicals you don't want. When I see it on the shelf, I don't just see a status symbol. I see one of the rare sparkling waters that actually lives up to the hype. Number 8. Sparkling Ice Black Raspberry Sparkling Water. Most flavored sparkling waters talk a big game. They've got flashy cans, bold names, and the promise of natural flavors, but when you peel back the label and look at the lab results, a lot of them come up dirty. That's why Sparkling Ice Black Raspberry caught my attention. When Consumer Reports and other testers ran the numbers in 2020, this flavor came back with 0 detectable PFAS. None. Not a trace of the forever chemicals that showed up in brands like LaCroix, Topo Chico, and Perrier. For once, the hype matched the data. Now, Sparkling Ice isn't pretending to be some ancient spring water or luxury import. It's a flavored sparkling water with vitamins, a little sweetness, and a bright purple label that screams fun drink. And you know what? I actually respect that. They're not trying to sell you a fantasy, they're telling you straight up what's inside. And the kicker is, it tested cleaner than half the serious sparkling waters that charge twice as much. For me, that makes this one a winner. If I want a fizzy drink with flavor, I'd rather grab the bottle that's been proven in the lab to come up clean than keep gambling on brands hiding behind fancy words like essence. Sparkling Ice Black Raspberry is one of the few I can actually enjoy without second guessing what's floating around in it. Number 7. 365 Spring Water. Whole Foods built its entire reputation on being cleaner, healthier, and more transparent than the average grocery store. So when I see their house brand, 365 Everyday Value Spring Water, I expect it to live up to that standard. And in this case, it actually does. Independent PFAS comparisons put 365 Spring Water in the low to non-detect range, far better than big-name brands like Deer Park or Nestle Pure Life that were flagged in the same testing. That's a big deal, because most store brands cut corners. They'll slap a private label on water bottled by one of the giant suppliers and call it a day. But Whole Foods has stricter supplier standards, and you can see the difference in the numbers. When labs looked, 365 Spring Water didn't carry the same forever chemical baggage you see in so many competitors. Now, let's be clear. It's not some luxury mineral water flown in from Europe. It's affordable spring water. But that's the point. You don't have to overpay for a glass bottle or chase down a trendy brand to get something that actually holds up in testing. For me, it proves that if a grocery store wants to, it can make a safer, cleaner option. Out of all the supermarket house brand waters, 365 is one of the few I'd actually trust to put in my cart. Number 6. Alkaline 88. If you've walked through the water aisle, you've probably seen those big square jugs with Alkaline 88 plastered across the front. The branding screams balance and wellness, like this water is going to fix your whole lifestyle. Now, I don't buy into all the alkaline hype. Your body already keeps your pH in check and no bottle of water is going to change that. But here's where Alkaline 88 actually earns a spot on the good side. The data. When bottled waters were compared, Alkaline 88 consistently showed low to non-detectable levels of contaminants. That's a lot more than I can say for some of the giant names that people buy without thinking twice. So while the 88 might be just a marketing hook, the actual product is cleaner than most of what's out there. And I'll give credit where it's due, the taste is smooth. Whether that's from the added minerals or just the filtration process, it goes down easier than a lot of bargain waters. No weird aftertaste, no chemical bite, just water. So while I roll my eyes at the perfect pH lifestyle pitch, the test results and the taste put Alkaline 88 ahead of the pack. If I'm lugging home a gallon of bottled water, I'd rather it be one of the few brands that's proven to be clean. Number 5. Smartwater. Smartwater is one of the biggest names in bottled water, and for good reason. Coke has the marketing machine to put it everywhere. But unlike a lot of flashy brands, Smartwater actually has something behind the label. It's vapor distilled water, meaning it's boiled into vapor, condensed back into liquid, and then finished off with added electrolytes for taste. Basically, it's a high-tech version of distilling at home, which strips out impurities instead of just running tap water through a filter. Now, I'm not saying it's magic. At the end of the day, it's still bottled water. But compared to all the store brand bottles that are just municipal water in disguise, Smartwater's process does give it a cleaner edge. And when independent tests looked for contaminants like PFAS, Smartwater consistently landed on the safer side of the spectrum, not showing the same issues you see in bargain brands. What I also like is that Smartwater doesn't oversell itself. It's not promising perfect pH balance or pretending it comes from some mystical spring. It's straightforward. Purified water with a smoother taste than what you'd get out of the tap. Yes, it costs more than the cheap cases stacked in the aisle, but at least here you know you're paying for extra filtration, not just a fancy label. Number 4. Gerolsteiner. And you can actually taste the difference. This isn't just water with bubbles. It's naturally carbonated mineral water that's loaded with calcium, magnesium, and bicarbonate. 1 liter of Gerolsteiner gives you as much calcium as a glass of milk and more magnesium than most sports drinks. That's not marketing, that's lab-verified mineral content. What I like about Gerolsteiner is that it doesn't have to pretend. A lot of brands slap the word mineral on the label and hope you don't ask questions, but Gerolsteiner publishes its mineral breakdown right there on the bottle. It's been one of Europe's top-selling mineral waters for decades, and when you look at the numbers, it's clear why. Independent tests haven't shown the same chemical baggage that plagues so many US brands, no scary PFAS headlines, no shady lawsuits about water rights, just consistently clean water with a mineral profile that's actually beneficial. Yeah, it's not the cheapest option. You'll usually find it in glass bottles, and it costs more than your average seltzer. But this is one of the few waters where you're actually getting something for that higher price. Real minerals, real taste, and real data to back it up. When I want sparkling water that actually feels like it's doing something, Gerolsteiner is my go-to. Number 3. Mountain Valley Spring Water. Mountain Valley is one of those bottled waters that actually feels American. It's been bottled straight from the Ouachita Mountains in Arkansas since the late 1800s, and it's still sold today in those iconic green glass bottles. Presidents have had it shipped to the White House, celebrities swear by it, and it's won international taste awards. That's a long track record, and it isn't built on gimmicks, it's built on quality. What I like about Mountain Valley is the combination of taste and transparency. This isn't just purified tap water dressed up in a label. It's natural spring water, and it has the mineral content to prove it. Calcium, magnesium, potassium, all naturally occurring, not added after the fact. That's what gives it the crisp, clean taste that people have kept coming back to for over a century. On the testing side, Mountain Valley has consistently landed on the safe end. It hasn't been tied to the PFAS issues or lawsuits you see with a lot of the big-name brands. And because it's packaged in glass more often than plastic, you don't run into the same microplastic concerns that plague cheaper bottled waters. Yes, it costs more, but you're getting heritage, minerals, clean sourcing, and safer packaging. For me, that makes Mountain Valley one of the best bottled waters you can actually feel good about drinking every day. Number 2. Evian. Evian has always been treated like the celebrity of bottled waters. You'll spot it backstage at fashion shows, in luxury hotels, even in music videos. For a lot of people, that screams overhyped and overpriced. Just another brand cashing in on a fancy French name. But here's the twist. Evian actually has the goods to back it up. Unlike the generic bottles that are really just filtered city tap, Evian is drawn straight from the Cachat Spring in the French Alps, a source that's been protected for decades. The water filters naturally through layers of glacial rock, picking up calcium and magnesium along the way, and that's what gives it its famously smooth taste. It's not engineered in a factory, it's straight from the source. And when labs have looked at it, Evian hasn't turned up with the kinds of contamination issues that sink so many other brands. No PFAS scandals, no recalls for particles or bacteria, just consistently clean results. On top of that, Evian regularly publishes its water analysis online, which is more transparency than you'll ever get from most US brands. So yeah, it carries a premium price, but this is one of the rare cases where the luxury water actually earns its spot. Evian isn't just status, it's one of the few bottles that's worth the reputation. Number 1. Icelandic Glacial. Some bottled waters lean on a story, but Icelandic Glacial is one where the story is the product. It comes from the Ulva Spring in Iceland. a source so large and naturally protected that it could supply the country for generations without running dry. The water filters through volcanic rock, so by the time it reaches the bottle, it already has that naturally alkaline balance and a crisp, almost silky taste. You don't need to be a water snob to notice the difference. It's one of those brands where the first sip actually feels cleaner. What separates Icelandic Glacial from the pack isn't just the source, it's the way the company runs it. Their bottling facility runs entirely on renewable geothermal and hydropower, and they were the first bottled water certified carbon neutral. That's rare in an industry notorious for plastic waste and greenwashing. And when independent labs have tested it, Icelandic Glacial hasn't shown the chemical baggage that drags down so many big US brands. No PFAS problems, no contamination scandals, just consistently clean results. To me, that makes it the perfect closer for the good list. It's not just water in a bottle, it's proof that if a brand cares about the source and the process, the quality takes care of itself.